My name is David, and I'm telling you about the Anglo-Saxons. Throughout history, fierce warriors would take over other nations. This is no different in the case of the Anglo-Saxons. The Anglo-Saxons invaded Britain after the Romans had left it with weak defenses and ill-prepared troops. Life for Anglo-Saxons dominated by social structure and war. Their community in England was a rural one whereof society lived on the land. Anglo-Saxon society was composed of social classes. At the top of the social system was the royal house, comprising of the king and the princes. During the Anglo-Saxon era, there was a movement away from Latin and towards Old English. Old English was easier to understand phonetically and made text more accessible to the average commoner. Children began being taught in Old English rather than Latin due to this, and most literary works of the time are written in Old English. Anglo-Saxons' reign over Great Britain started during 450 CE and lasted until 1066 CE after the Norman conquest. During this reign, everything political and social changed, which impacted people's everyday life. During the early time of settlement, the early pagans lived off of farming, but they created different kingdoms that waged war on each other. After 250 years, in 700 AD, a heptarchy had been created, in which there were 7 ruling kingdoms over what is now Britain. Christianity started in the 7th century before the heptarchy. With Christianity also brought more literacy, with the monasteries that were being established. After the 8th century, the Anglo-Saxons started to be attacked by the Danes. This united the Anglo-Saxons under the rule of the king after he made a treaty with the Danish. This divided the Anglo-Saxon nation and gave some of the property to the Danish. This kept things calm, but before the 11th century, the Danes started to attack again, which led to the Danish king Sinut rising to the English throne in 1016. Life for Anglo-Saxons was dangerous because of feuds, war, and punishments. Anglo-Saxons were susceptible for famine and epidemics, which caused the life expectancy to be in the 30s. These epidemics also led to a high mortality rate found in infants. In the common life of Anglo-Saxons was the social class structure. While there were many different titles, the main difference in Anglo-Saxon society was either being a slave or being free. Different areas and different time periods throughout the Anglo-Saxon had different social structures, even for the slaves. The most prominent classes, while being free, is to be a king, nobleman, or freeman. The main difference between these broad classes was their wegild, or how much they were worth. Women during this time were actually treated well, and based on their law were worth the same as men and could testify and hold land. Compared to other societies, there was a large amount of literature that survived from the Anglo-Saxon time period. Their literature is divided into Latin and Old English. The Anglo-Saxons created the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle. This describes all the events that happened from the invasion of Britain by Julius Caesar to the end of the Anglo-Saxon period and more. Most original writings in Old English include sermons and other religious texts. Even though the Germans knew Latin before they came to Britain, they decided to write their code of laws in Old English. Medical books were one of the only documents that were written, not translated in both Old English and Latin.